just tweeting to the masses. Pardon me. The people are waiting, and I had to let them know. Like when Mussolini would address the throngs in Rome, and he would be on a balcony, or what was his name in Argentina? Juan Perón would do that too. I think I'm not sure. It's probably Mussolini who invented that, but that was the dictator move. Mid 20th century. I aspire to that. Like I want to be on that goddamn balcony. You know who did that not long ago was actually Netanyahu. Right, like the day before Rabin was assassinated by one of Netanyahu's dudes, and Rabin was sort of the peace guy at the time. And yeah, Netanyahu gives this speech in Jerusalem and like the main intersection, but on a balcony, like 3 stories up, just like and the whole intersection is like packed with people. And he starts talking about Rabin as a traitor, basically. And then the next day, I think it was, or shortly after, this is a big moment in Israeli history. Yeah, and Rabin had been the prime minister, and he was going to be soon. He was competing with Netanyahu, and one of Netanyahu's fans shot Rabin at a rally. But yeah, no, it's the power of that, and it's so phallic. You get to like stand over, looking down on the people who are supplicants to you. That's what I'm going for with Twitter. And
yeah, Stalin would do that too.
Stalin, probably, I guess so. Of course, Hitler did. Oh, Hitler did it in right when he took power. And it's interesting. He in 33, I think it was the summer of 33. Like he had just been in power for a few months, I believe. I could be getting this wrong, but I know that early on, and actually really until the war started, but certainly for the first several years, dude was not popular. People completely inflate his popularity among Germans. It was in Berlin. It was like some big military parade, some big national thing. And he was there and he was on his balcony overlooking the thing. And basically no one showed up. And there was a parade. I think he also paraded through Berlin, and it was embarrassing how few people showed up. Fewer than 10% of the German population was Nazi members. Everyone loves to forget that and loves to talk about how they all were Nazis and therefore all deserve to die in firestorms. Anyway, yeah. So but God, must have felt good to be a 20th century dictator in those moments. Going out was bad for all of them. They always had it. All of them had a bad exit, but I don't know. But then again, Mussolini hung upside down. How did they actually finish him? They hung him by his ankles. I know that.
I know it involved a knife. I know, right? Like,
yeah,
he was dragged through the streets. Wasn't he stabbed a bunch? Wasn't he kind of Gaddafi'd, right?
I mean, all I know is that he was hung by his ankles, upside down, but I don't know how. God, I'm thinking, Ceausescu, I think was just shot. No, they tortured his ass, and that's right. No, what did they do to Ceausescu? They hang him. They did something pretty bad. But then again, he had done lots of bad things to lots of people for decades. All of them went out really. Saddam, not good. Poor Gaddafi, good gosh. I briefly dated a black girl in college who, in her dorm room, she had Gaddafi's, I think it's called Little Green Book. It's like, damn, in Ohio in 1985. That was, he was big on the left for a while.
Yeah.
People also forget, and he still is kind of, there's still glimmers. I mean, the left, and the more I hear from them, I'm like, oh shit. I mean, dude was a dictator, obviously, in all sorts of bad ways. There's no supporting him, but he actually served and he also probably blew up an airliner full of civilians. But he also was very useful. See, this is where we're at, right? The resistance against the U.S. empire has all sorts of participants in it, and we don't get to really choose who elects to stand up and throw a rock at the empire. It's whoever we get, whoever the empire is pissing off, and whoever has the courage in the moment, and which happens to be right now people of Gaza and the Houthis. Who,
it's funny the dissident right has kind of taken up that liking to Gaddafi and Saddam that the left used to have.
Yeah, right. Or at least they're just smart about it. It's not like, I don't think anybody's like pro those dudes. It's just like, whatever.
Yeah.
Removing them gave rise to like much worse chaos in those areas of the world. And those guys were very bad in many ways, but they were also smeared in many ways, just like Putin. Like, the whole US imperial propaganda machine just must demonize all of the opponents in the world 24/7, and there can be no letting up. So there's no nuance in their views of any of these guys historically, right? From the Kaiser in World War I, no, from the Spanish Empire, the king in Spanish American War, all the way through every single time, right? Ho Chi Minh was this demon. They've all been that. And so we don't ever get any kind of nuanced view whatsoever of any of these very important world leaders who we go to war with. And they're always cited as the principal cause of the war. The reason for the war is because there's a devil over there. And let me tell you about all the terrible things he's done. It's the same script for every one of them. And so, in every case, but you could say this about every head of state, but certainly in these cases, in every case, it was at least partly true. All kinds of bad things were done by these people, but nowhere to the extent claimed by the United States ever. Saddam was not Saddam the way we were taught, nor was Gaddafi. They weren't just like running around raping and pillaging and murdering for fun, which is really how it was presented.
That's how his sons were, though.
Who? Oh, yeah. I forgot about that guy.
Yeah.
One in particular. Yeah. And they both got offed, right?
Did they?
I think somehow. Didn't they both? Who was the main one? The Q something with a Q name? Or no, who was the main playboy?
Uday?
Yes.
Yeah, Uday got off.
Yeah, Uday. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
How though?
Man, Uday Hussein.
Was it in the war or were they assassinated separately?
He died in 2003.
During the war. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. They were at the house
in 2003.
No, actually, weren't they even guarding the palace or something, Uday? I think he was actually even killed. I think, was he not at or around the palace when they captured it?
On the morning of Tuesday, 22nd July 2003, JSOC Task Force 20, aided by troops of United States Army, surrounded Uday and his 14-year-old son during a raid on his home.
Cool. Love that.
Yeah.
They kill a 14-year-old too?
Did the son die?
Hell yeah. Cut in half by a 50 cal.
Yeah.
A mounted one of those beautiful mounted machine guns, which I want so badly. God, one of those. Can you imagine on a Jeep, and you can just drive through any city, and just from any, at any point, just like you could cut a whole building in half with it.
They killed the 14-year-old too. Yeah,
of course they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, his body was in pieces after that shit. I think it's 50 caliber, right? Someone check me. Is the mounted ones, the main ones that like Marines use on the Jeeps? That's the ones. That's what I really want. I think it's a 50 caliber howitzer. It's, to me, that's always been the most enviable weapon I've seen the U.S. military have. I mean, I'd love to have an Apache combat helicopter for sure. Don't get me wrong. Although there's chance of crashing. One of those mounted machine guns that can they blow up whole buildings, Gosh, who doesn't want one of those? Had not a few fantasies about that. But anyway, yeah, imagine against like a 14-year-old body. That would, probably not be too much of a strain to kill him with that. Yeah. I bet you Uday was a cool guy to hang out with. Unfairly maligned. Imagine being Uday's buddy. I mean, I don't know. I would guess, you'd have pretty amazing nights in Baghdad.
Newsweek claimed that contents of Uday's Hussein briefcase consisted of Viagra, numerous bottles of cologne, unopened packages of men's underwear, Dress shirt, silk tie, and a single condom.
What did I say?
Yeah.
Precisely. Case closed. Anyway, dictators and their party sons. No, I mean, the way it's incredible how they've Hitler, well, Stalin died in his sleep, I think. Certainly died. No one.
The story is
he's about the only one. Mao.
Yeah.
Mao got off easy. Well, actually, the big three Hitler killed himself. So the big three, and if you count Roosevelt, which I do, the big four all got off basically easy by their own hand or by natural causes. But all the other dictators, like the B level, the B's and C's, pretty much. Let's see, Pinochet survived, right? He died in his old age, I think, but he wasn't even nearly as bad as a lot of them. Mugabe, how did Mugabe go out? I don't know, but yeah, but it's spectacular endings often. That's what's cool.
The story about Stalin is that he was sick, but everybody was too scared to check on him because they didn't want to be the guy that was in the same room with Stalin while he died.
Right. Right. Seeking, his resentment just boiling to the surface, seeking some target to blame for his demise, like Hitler in the bunker scene. In that movie that was the meme for a few years there. Yeah. Yeah.
Are you bringing this up because of the current devil, the current enemy of the U.S. empire, Vladimir Putin, is being interviewed by Tucker Carlson as we speak?
We speak.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I just got the text from. They told me. Putin's people. So that's why I was told you we're gonna have heat. Came down. There's an order. No radio silence until the interview's over. That's why we're not talking about Michael.
Okay.
And listen, do you want to fuck with that villa in Miami that we hang out in? Like, seriously? I mean, anyway, sorry.
Well, this is the first chance.
People, do you know that I had an agent whose job it was to sell like TV projects for me. This is 10 years ago. Who then, when the Russiagate thing started, he was my agent at the time, started accusing me on Twitter, I'm not shitting you, of being an employee of Vladimir Putin. This is a Hollywood agent. I'm still mad about it. That's why I said that. It's true. My bad. Go ahead.
Yeah. But yeah, this is the first time in a long time that American audiences, especially the old Fox News watching audience, is going to have a chance. The people who normally cheerlead for war are going to have a chance to actually listen to our enemy, quote unquote, and then have him give his unfiltered thoughts in a 2-hour long form interview. I think it's a big shift in how Warcraft is done and how it can be done.
Do you know what's happening to Tucker Carlson right now? And I've seen the right wing talk about him, and the left wing too. But I mean, much of the right wing, not all. I mean, the dissidents are all basically still down with him, but all of his pre-existing enemies now in the last couple of days, the way Hillary's been talking about him, they are. This is a full-on Alger Hiss moment. They are doing that. They're Alger Hissing him, and Hiss was on the left, liberal left at the time. Tucker's been on the conservative right, but it's sort of this just an inverted McCarthyism going on, meaning that the way they're talking about him. I mean, Hillary called him a useful idiot who said, "Oh, of course he'll be working for Putin soon. Why wouldn't he?" He said. I mean, like literally, he'll be working. He'll have like a show on RT or whatever. So when you do that, you're now calling him a traitor. I mean, actually a traitor. No longer sort of hinting about it, right? No longer sort of suggesting that he's like culturally a traitor, intellectually and politically. He's saying things that are aiding Putin, is what was said. Today and yesterday, leading up to this interview, what they are saying is that Tucker actually works for dude. Just like they said about me, just like they said about everybody who questioned Russiagate from the beginning. So this is a big moment, and this is, as I said, Tucker Carlson is not a communist. Alger Hiss, guess what, turned out to be an actual communist who probably was working for the Soviet Union. I mean, do we think that Tucker has been taking money from Vladimir Putin, from the Russian government, and that's why he has said what he has said about the Ukraine war? Tucker Carlson, who made his own studio with a fucking river in the background, an actual river in the background, and he owns all that property in Maine, and that's one of many properties. You think Tucker, who was born into money, by the way, and by the way, do we all remember who Tucker's father was? He was the head of Voice of America, run by the CIA and the State Department. That's what Tucker's dad was. You think Tucker Carlson, the son of that shit, who went to which prep school? One of the major prep schools in the Northeast, like where Franklin Roosevelt went, where all the presidents went. That Tucker, that kid, he's working for he's taking money from Vladimir Putin. These are the same people. I gotta say, it's the exact same people. Is this right? It's not right. I'm mad at the right about Gaza. I wanted to like somehow shoehorn that in.
Oh.
There's some overlap there, but there are some differences. Anyway, no, but it's.
Are people on the right turning on Tucker? Because I know the usual suspects are mad at him, but
I meant establishment right. Sorry,
yeah.
I thought I was clear that I said the dissident right's been very good on this, but
okay.
no, dissident right. I haven't seen any defectors from that side.
Well,
but
you pointed out to Bill Kristol.
Wait, so Ann Coulter has like taken an establishment turn, like a hard one. I mean, she turned against Trump years ago, but lately, I don't know if you saw this, but she's gone like all out against Trump, all things Trump related, including, I think, Tucker. I don't know. Like it's anyway. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, you're pointing at Bill Kristol and Neocons, and he got into a little spat with Scott Ritter.
Oh, now okay. Now this is one of those very, very few instances where the dissident right or left, and Scott is mostly dissident left, but he has some really interesting right-wing edges to him. And I'm still trying to figure out who dude is, but it's one of those very few instances. Scott Horton somehow tricking, it wasn't Scott, but the Soho Forum tricking Bill Kristol into debating Scott. Like, I think it was one of these cases where like Bill Kristol had literally never been like asked to debate one of his opponents, and so didn't even know who this was, and didn't.
Gene Epstein was an old friend back in the days when
were they?
I think so. True? I think Gene Epstein got to connect with Bill Kristol, and
Gene. Oh,
yeah.
Gosh. No comment. Anyway, yeah, it was sort of like that, where I mean, on a much smaller scale, although maybe more significant because it's got much more of an audience on Twitter. What was it? Kristol said something about, I forget. Was it Israel? Probably Israel. And Scott just like smashed it back in his face. Do you have that?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up. Sorry.
And then, but the best part is Kristol responded to Scott Ritter, and I'm like, if I were Bill Kristol's agent, and this is a credit to him, let's give credit where due. Bill Kristol has now formally and publicly responded to both Scott Horton and Scott Ritter. I mean, the two most aggro, anti-war, anti-imperialist, anti-neocon people in the world. And he's actually taken them on. Props, Bill. I mean that. He's a nebbishy little Jew from the Upper West Side. I mean,
yeah, I don't see Kristol's response to Scott Ritter, but the tweet was, I don't like Jane Fonda going to Hanoi in 72. I don't like Tucker Carlson going to Moscow in 24. But I'm just an unsophisticated, old-fashioned Scoop Jackson Democrat / John McCain Republican.
Right. Oh, maybe that's what it was. And I think Scott responded to that and sort of pointed out what that means. It means. Go ahead.
Yeah, he said, no, you're a warmongering chicken hawk who never served a day in uniform and yet promotes war as if you know something about it. You're a lying sack of shit who helps spread lies about Iraq WMDs in order to justify the illegal invasion and occupation. Blood of thousands of American and millions of Iraqis is on your hand. You are scum personified.
So the history of the neocons. where this all comes from, where Bill Kristol comes from, where the Iraq War comes from, where these ideas about the Ukraine war come from, where Victoria Nuland come from. Real quickly, so people may know the Trotskyist side, which is my parents' organization, is where the neocons come from. A lot, not all of them, many of them do. Bill Kristol's dad, most importantly, Irving, was a member of my parents' socialist Trotskyist organization. And the neocons in general, before they were neocons, were that kind of leftist. They were Marxists, very left-wing socialists. And then, but they were also Jewish. And so when Israel comes about, they start to feel their Jewishness. They didn't give a fuck about Jewish anything before, all totally secular, totally anti-religious, secular, like my parents could give a fuck. Until Israel comes around for the neocons, they get all warm. They get warm feelings about Israel, and then they suddenly realize that they're Jewish, and don't like the browns and the blacks for various reasons. So in the 60s, they're looking for like a place to go. These disaffected leftists who love, socialized medicine. They love public support for education. They love that shit. Welfare, even for the poor, great. What they love the most is public education. They love like making sure that all American children are taught the same patriotic values, which includes America's obligation to rule the world. And I'm not kidding you. That's what they want. They try to instill that. So anyway, these guys are like these leftist Jewish intellectuals in New York City in the 60s who like are communists basically, except they want the United States to be the emperors, the new Rome in the world. They're looking for a new place to go. They're like, the left sucks because they're anti-war, they're anti-Vietnam. Scoop Jackson, who built, thank you, Bill, for like invoking, for letting the people know now who your godfather was of all things a Gentile, super Gentile, waspy senator, U.S. senator from Seattle, Washington, of all places where there's hardly any Jews, or a very small Jewish thing. But Scoop Jackson, for a variety of reasons, had almost exactly the same politics. He was just a big standard Democrat in the 60s. In the 60s, the Democrats were quite lefty liberal. So Scoop, just like LBJ, was super into giving lots of money to black people. Love that shit. So welfare is great. Environment, he loved giving money to save the forests and the mountains and the rivers and the whales. And pro-abortion, I believe, and all the good stuff. Lots of social welfare, kind of a social democrat. But Scoop Jackson was from where again? Seattle in the 1950s and 60s and 70s. What was the main industry? This is before Microsoft. This is before the internet. In Seattle during that time, Boeing. The creators of the B-52 bomber, among many other things, responsible for killing more human beings than any other machine ever invented. That's Boeing in Seattle. So Scoop fucking loved war. Every war he met, from Vietnam on, from Korea on, all of them, just couldn't wait to kill the commies. And then when he found out about the Arabs, he couldn't wait to kill them. And so he was this interesting combination of super left-wing, liberal left, on social politics, cultural politics too, and a hawkish imperialist on foreign policy. And so Bill Kristol, when he was an undergraduate student, I think he was 19 years old at Harvard, when Scoop was running for president in the early 70s, I think 72, Bill Kristol volunteered for Scoop Jackson and put up posters for Scoop around Harvard Square in Cambridge, Massachusetts for president, because they found kindred soul in this guy. And then all the other neocons like Paul Wolfowitz and Bill's dad, Irving Kristol, and all of them, the Podoritzes, Norman Podoritz, John Podoritz, all the neocons who gave us the Iraq war, who gave us the Ukraine war, and are giving us the Gaza war. Yeah, ultimately it's their responsibility. They found their boy in this Scoop Jackson dude, the senator, who for many years gave them jobs as staffers on Capitol Hill. And once they had jobs as staffers on Capitol Hill, they wormed their way. Yeah, that's an anti-Semitic trope. It's true though, they wormed their way into the Capitol and all the various, especially the State Department, and then into the White House. And then they became part of the deep state, the permanent state. Neocons stayed inside there and stayed around the Capitol, had think tanks all around the Capitol, flooding it with ideas about invading and bombing everywhere and extending the American empire. So that's Scoop Jackson. And that's who Bill Kristol was talking about. He supported the Vietnam War. He supported every war. That's who Bill Kristol is saying is my daddy. And he's right. Yeah, and that's who it is. And by the way, the same people who are supporting Gaza right now, every single one that I know of, who are opposing the ceasefire, supported the Iraq War. And no one's bringing that up. No one is bringing that up. We are still supposed to respect the opinions of people who supported the Iraq War, especially when we're questioning whether to kill, is it 100 kids a day now? Anyway, so thanks, Bill. And thanks, Scott.
Before the show started, I was telling you I caught some of the Tucker interview, and it's actually kind of boring.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Vladimir Putin spends the first hour of it slowly explaining the entirety of Russia's history as a state and the idea of Ukrainian nationalism, the idea of Ukraine being a nation, and how Poland used it against, how Austria used it with Poland against the Soviet Union around World War I, and how, Catherine the Great and the 1300s and all that. And Tucker is just like out of his element and doesn't know how to comment on it. And he's just like, I'm not uninterested in this. I just don't see how it's relevant to my question. And I think a lot of people are just going to be shocked at how boring this interview is.
I told you before that one of the many things that people misunderstand about Putin is that temperamentally, he's a professor, and his speeches are lectures, and they're often history lectures. And he's actually authored a scholarly article on the history of Ukrainian nationalism. And as far as I know, it's a legitimate, serious piece of scholarship. You can disagree with it, but it follows all the academic conventions and should be taken seriously as scholarly work. The work that I've done on that which was a little bit on Ukrainian nationalism, it comports with it. He's usually right about these things, in my experience. And I don't give a fuck about Putin. I came into this with not caring one way or the other about Putin. I wanted to know. I challenge everybody to, next time you hear about Putin assassinating journalists, which is like almost the first thing, and dissidents, political dissidents in Russia, it's almost the first thing you'll hear from proponents of the Ukraine war as to why we should do this. Well, Putin assassinates political opponents. There's a bunch of famous cases. I've said this before. What's his face won an Academy Award for it. Please go look at all of them. Spend some time looking at every single one of them. You will find that in most cases they are comical frauds. And in the few where it's not clearly just bullshit fraud, it's very, very questionable. Like Navalny is what I'm thinking. Alexei Navalny. Like, that guy's a huckster. He's a racist, by the way. He's clearly a huckster. And there's no doubt, if you look into it, that this has been his grift for about a decade. And he ended up getting a goddamn Academy Award and all the money that comes with that from dumbass Hollywood during the Ukraine war. Is he dictatorial? Sure, in some ways. Is he homophobic? Sure, but not in any way that's material to anybody. 80% of Russians support him. It's ridiculous. Part of this, the demonization, right? We have to demonize these people. So Americans have zero nuanced view of him. Mm-hmm. But anyway, sorry, I digressed.
Well, imagine, we're talking about democracy, right? And Putin essentially being some sort of dictator who flies in the face of democratic conventions. Imagine if Biden spent 2 hours to sit down with a Russian national journalist in the name of open transparency and democracy. Yeah.
I mean, the competency piece of it right now, the comparison between the two, when you said Biden, I thought of what he just said, that statement about Hamas that he made today or yesterday, when he couldn't get through it, and he paused. At one point, he forgot who he was talking about, or something happened in his brain. And he paused and he thought he was wrestling. He said, and he called Hamas the opponent or the opposition. He said, well, the opposition. And he realized, I think a reporter even corrected him and said, do you mean Hamas? He said, yeah, Hamas. You see this? You see that clip?
No, not that. Not yet. No.
Oh, everyone should. I mean, this is the most decrepit moment in Biden's career. And that's saying a lot. But I'm saying compared to Putin, and again, give a fuck about Putin. I don't care, even though he pays me so much money. Why would I care about Putin? Like, that's the other thing. Like, there's nothing about Putin that would be like organically admirable to me. You know, I don't, what? He's not any part of ideology I care about. But just in terms of competency, and this is a big thing because Russians value this. They value Russians generally, Russian culture, Russian political culture has always been sort of famously stoic, famously disciplined, famously non-emotional, famously rationalistic. Even Alexander Dugin, who was on my show, the notorious philosopher of the Russian right, and he's known for his mysticism. He's really, Alexander's very, very, the way he, just like me and Foucault, very rationalistic. Our conclusions challenge the overarching paradigm of the Enlightenment, but we use the tools of the Enlightenment. We think just like rationalistic, logo-centered thinkers. Putin is all about the Enlightenment. He's all about that. He's also ultra competent in this. As I said, he can write. I was trying to think. He wrote a scholarly article about the history of Ukrainian nationalism. I was trying to remember, was it during the war or just before it? I think it might have been during the war. He fucking wrote this thing, and it's legit. And it's like many, many pages, quite long. And the speeches he's given, you can tell he's written these things too. They're so long and so complex and so deeply researched. When I read a Putin speech, it takes me time because there's so many references. Compared to like an American politician's speech, right? You can skim through that. The historical references are like so cartoonish. And again, you can think Putin is whatever you want, a cartoonish, evil dictator who only lies. Fine. Even then, you can see just like Hitler. Hitler's speeches are incredible pieces of work. They are works of scholarship, making an argument that are like supported with tremendous research and analytical tools. Again, Hitler comes to conclusions that we don't like, but you have to take them seriously as intellectual projects. Just like Gaddafi's Little Green Book in my girlfriend's room when I was 19 years old. There's an argument in there. There's an argument often against U.S. imperialism too. It unites all these guys. Mm-hmm. That's logical. The demonization. This is what's so frustrating to me when I listen to friends of mine who talk about Hamas the way that they talked about Saddam, the way they talked about Putin, the way they talked about friends of mine, people have been on the show, very smart, very skeptical of the government in all sorts of ways on domestic issues. But when it comes to these things, they believe that Saddam Hussein is a threat to peace in the world, that Muammar Gaddafi is, a dictatorial enslaver and rapist, and on and on. And same with Putin and same with Hamas. They think they're animals, demons who can't be reasoned with, who have no rational demands, rational requests, that they can only be put down like dogs. And they are thinking entirely through the lens of American propaganda that demonizes the enemies of American empire. And I just wish by now, after all these dictators we've done this to over more than 100 years, and alleged dictators, and now we know that Saddam didn't have weapons of mass destruction, and Saddam wasn't quite the dictator we thought, and Gaddafi wasn't quite the dictator we thought, and Ho Chi Minh had a huge popular support, and on and on and on and on. Doesn't mean these were good guys. Again, I don't care about any of them. But it just sends us to war, because when we think they're animals and demons, there's nothing else to do. And that's exactly the people who have thought these things about those world leaders, those enemies of the empire before, think this about Hamas now. And the whole argument is they're animals, and therefore we just have to kill them. I'm sorry. I feel terrible about those children, but they are ruled by animals. And the only thing you can do with animals is kill them. Wild animals, rabid animals. It's true. So it's this long history of demonization that has resulted in the deaths of just countless people. The demonization of Putin is very much a part of that. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, you know, what was it, 6 months ago? That's all we were talking about for 2 years. And now there's a new war, a new demonization, and a new use of that to expand the empire and murder lots of people in the service of it. Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about the Super Bowl instead?
Do you think there's going to be a major domestic incident at the Super Bowl coming up?
I'm really surprised that you didn't ask this at the top of the show, because this is what everyone was waiting for. Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna make a lot of money for everybody right now. Okay. Just trust me on this. Just go take out a loan and put all the money on. Don't even take the points. Fuck the points. Take the money line to win. Put all your money on it. Get another mortgage on your house. Sell your wife's wedding ring. Take all that money, and you're going to thank me on Monday, and put it on the Chiefs, because they are going to slash the 49ers to ribbons. And Brock Purdy's going to have a really bad night, and I'm going to feel bad for him, but not so bad, because all my friends will be much richer. Not on Monday, actually on Sunday night. So yeah, no question the Chiefs are going to win this. It's going to be double digits, I think, most likely. Somewhere around 31-19. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying. If you respect my acumen on geopolitics and cultural affairs and black culture, which is linked, mm-hmm. right? See, if I know about, like, you know, the history of hip hop and black dance, I got to know something about the NFL. If you respect that, you will do what I say, and you will thank me on Monday, because you'll be much richer. Okay. Anyway, conspiracy theories, Taylor Swift. So think about this. What happens if the Chiefs win the Super Bowl? There's a parade, if that happens, in Kansas City. And she's showed up to everything so far. Every single game she has showed up and come down to the field after the win and the whole 9 yards, right? They're obviously very cool about showing this off. So she's then got to be at the downtown Kansas City celebration for the Super Bowl champion Chiefs too, I assume. The security for that is going to be bananas. So for those who don't know, Travis Kelce has done ads for Pfizer multiple times to encourage people to get the vaccine. Taylor Swift has made it known for many years that she's a Democrat and that she's going to vote for Joe Biden. She hasn't been very vocal about it, but we know that's where she's going politically. And then a poll just came out. What was it? That some massive, incredible, stupendous percentage of American voters will decide their vote based on what Taylor Swift tells them to do. Something like a quarter. Will be influenced, I think they said. Will be influenced in their thinking about who to vote for based on what Taylor Swift says about the election. Something like a quarter, maybe a third of Americans. Does that sound crazy? Do you guys know Americans? You ever seen any Americans? You ever talked to any? Yeah. Does that seem crazy? No, that's exactly how Americans are. Come on now.
I would say an entire generation of young women.
Right.
Well, yeah.
I wasn't thinking it was going to be NFL fans.
Well, think about it. Taylor Swift got her deal from Toby Keith, rest in peace, in 2005.
Oh, R.I.P.
Yeah.
Toby Keith. I won't say this. Doesn't matter. Keep going. Toby Keith is sort of important in my family history for a very weird reason, but so I am a little sad that he's dead.
Yeah, one of the greatest hit makers ever.
Well,
yeah,
he also, I believe, wasn't he kind of the first to sort of defend and renew and revive the redneck in country? Well, no, I mean since outlaw, since like outlaw country in the 70s, and then Nashville takes over. Outlaw country was the best at this, super pro redneck. Then Nashville takes over, white breads the whole industry. Toby Keith, I think, like in the 2000s, early 2000s, comes out. He's like, I'm a redneck. I'm a red, white, and blue guy. Fuck you. And this is what right? I mean,
yeah. Well, country got soft in the 90s when Garth Brooks got big.
Right.
And
right.
Toby Keith kind of started out like that as a heartthrob. And if you listen to his earlier music, it's kind of danceable, and it's
right.
yeah. It's not what you know him for later. And then the early 2000s come out, and then he becomes a huge supporter of the U.S. military after 9/11, and he has this big muscle persona, and has hits like "I Love This Bar" and "Red Solo Cup," and brings back the old image of the redneck in popular culture. Yeah.
I mean, there were always pro redneck dudes in country, but they were not. I'm saying like they didn't reach the top 10. They didn't become sort of mainstream.
He brought it back, as a mainstream.
Exactly. You wouldn't see them on, doing major music videos. But Toby Keith, you did. He was in your face about it too. And I hated him at the time because of his politics, because he was basically pro-war. And just the patriotic stuff I just find to be really stupid and self-destructive. But if you want to get yourself killed, like merge your identity with a nation state. That's a great way to go, because next thing you know, you're shipping off your son to war. Great name. Fucking phenomenal name. Loved his first name so much. Yeah, still do. Love that name for sure. That's what I love the most about Toby Keith. But no, I actually do appreciate now that the cultural defiance, because we can argue about war with these guys, but they're defiant and dissident in certain ways, I suppose. I don't know.
Well, I brought up Toby Keith because he gave Taylor Swift her first record deal in 2005.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, which was 18 years ago.
Wow.
And so basically...
Right, she started out as sort of pure country, right?
Yeah.
Straight country.
Yeah, commercial, but yes, definitely a country artist.
Straight country, not pure. Yeah, right.
Yeah, she played the Grand Ole Opry. She came up through Nashville, and now she's the biggest pop star ever, period. A billionaire. And she's kind of like the monolith of young girls entertainment for last 18 years. And so pretty much everybody who grew up on her entertainment is now of voting age. And so it's very, very possible that that it could have an effect on the election. Yeah.
This is wow. You know what it's come down to? Although, well, yeah, it's come down to this guys and gals, Michael Weimer, everyone listening to me, think about this. It's all come down to Taylor Swift versus Joe Rogan. Think about the two audiences there. Think about their different politics, their different worldviews, right? Think about the numbers of each. How many Joe Rogan fans are there? How many Taylor Swift fans are there? And those two groups are already at war and have been. But that's where we are. It's not all bad, by the way, but like Democrat versus Republican is sort of like, what is that? But if you tell people Joe Rogan, Taylor Swift, and everything they represent, including political stuff and cultural stuff and what hot sauce they like, everyone will have a very clear, immediate idea about what this means and what this is about and what's at stake, and we've got to win. Taylor Swift and Joe Rogan, are you kidding me? Which American under the age of 50 doesn't have a stake in that fight? And that's what it's about. And so if he were to like full-throatedly endorse someone, which he's sort of like half-throatedly endorsed, I think, Bernie, maybe, which gave basically, by the way, that probably doubled Bernie's votes.
Mhm.
No, honestly, those two people are more influential across broader numbers of people than anybody in the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, anybody in a political organization. They're more influential than Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and George Bush combined, and Donald Trump. And Donald Trump, maybe. Well, that's close. But, yeah, probably. Right? I mean, that's what it's about now. It's those two worldviews. Those are the dominant there's two masses at war, and they have a king and a queen. Am I wrong?
Well, yeah. You're not. I mean, culturally, you're onto something for sure.
Okay. Well,
and the thing is, I think the Taylor Swift audience is more prone to see civic engagement as something important, where
sure.
the Joe Rogan audience is more likely to just drink beer and say, "Oh, they're all crazy, they're all stupid. I'm not going to show up."
True.
Like, they're more likely to get high and skip the election.
True. Totally true.
Mhm.
On the other hand, the Rogan audience is far more aggressive intellectually.
Mhm.
And is going to be way more knowledgeable and just sort of aggressive and sort of, delving into political questions deeply to come up with the answer, to find the truth as they believe in it. The Taylor Swift crowd, not so diligent, not so aggressive, not so interested in that kind of thing, have very strongly held opinions about certain issues. But yeah, I mean, they're also much more likely to vote. They're much more likely to be in a protest march sometime soon, or anytime. They're much more likely to be a member of a political organization. You're right. But they are far less likely to be knowledgeable on a subject. It's just true. The Rogan audience, it's essentially, this is what's great about it. It's essentially nerds. People like Joe who are like really, really curious about shit, like just super curious. They often go in directions with their curiosity that I think are stupid or wrong or bad or whatever, but they're very fucking curious. Taylor Swift audience, not so much. They're curious about Taylor's outfits and the lyrics in her songs and which boyfriend they refer to, which is all fine. I'm not denigrating. I'm just saying they're not different kind of minds. But you're right. What's amazing is they are nonetheless far more aggressive in acting politically, in determining the lives, the society, where the streetlights are, who's mayor, whether we kill children in Gaza, than the Rogan side. I mean, they are really will be very active.
And in the world of, like, in the internet world, the two audiences you do not want to mess with are K-pop stans and Swifties. And those two audiences will go at the most aggressive doxing and harassment campaigns that you could ever possibly imagine, because of the beef that Taylor often has, like with Kanye ongoing and other rappers. You'll find some of the most dehumanizing racist rhetoric ever, unapologetically from Swifties, in the most hilarious and unhinged and completely unapologetic tweets ever. So yeah, it's a fanatical base that can be mobilized, and the Pentagon did talk about this in a 2019 little thing about psyops, that she was she was an example of a celebrity that could wield influence for an election. Yeah,
I did not know this. What?
Yeah,
Who said this?
That's where Posobic's conspiracy theory about Taylor Swift sort of really originates. There was some conference at the Pentagon in 2019 where she was mentioned. Yeah.
Oh, awesome. But it's true. I mean, I just laid out why, if I were seeking political power in this country, or if I held political power in this country, where would you, what are the two people, if you had to rank them, what are the top two most important people to get on your side? And I just told you who they are. I think this is right. Beyonce is long gone. Beyonce is 10 years ago. Right now, it's Joe Rogan and Taylor Swift. Think about it. Those two encompass and represent damn near everybody who's political at all in this country at some point.
And the thing about the Taylor Swift psyop is that she came from Nashville. She came from your standard American household entertainment, go to Walmart and buy her CDs. Her influence could be very influential on swing states and on the Trump audience of white country music consumers.
Well, she has white women, say no more. I mean, that's all you got, that's all you got to know. How many white women are into Taylor Swift? Like, what percentage of white women are into Taylor Swift? And what percentage of white women vote? There you go. All I know is those two numbers are huge.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. And that's all you got to know. White women, very unfortunately, still determine the shape of American politics. It's a real shame.
Mm-hmm.
I've known some really smart white women, some brilliant ones too, some who are just really outstanding representatives of their race and gender. Credit to both their sex, gender, all of the sex, gender, race. They really, really stand up well for their people. But as a group, as a class, do we want a nuclear armed superpower to be run by white women?
Well, and the irony of bringing up Toby Keith is, if you look at the origins of the PSYOP, it's rooting for the American empire. It's the tool of the American empire, this entertainment industry. yeah. Like, her lineage is that. Now, there's a thing called source amnesia, where people just talk about something forever and ever, and Republicans fall prey, or the right wing falls prey to this all the time, is that you talk about something that you're pissed off about, but you end up boosting the profile of the thing you're pissed off about. Yep. And that's, I think, a huge element of this PSYOP that's happening, is that outrage bait is like 80% of the content. Like, I don't hear Taylor Swift fans talk about the NFL or the Super Bowl, really. I mean, they'll have one fun Super Bowl party this year and then forget about it a month later. But
her boyfriend is so cute.
Yeah.
And he's like won the Super Bowl. Yeah, it's not going to go much deeper than that. But man, they're going to have some passionate feelings about trans people.
Well, and also imagine how enraged your average like dad sitting at home is watching his team lose. This is what Shane Gillis brought up on Joe Rogan. Like, understanding the hate is that you're watching your team lose all the time, and every 30 seconds it cuts to this uncharismatic this uncharismatic player, Travis Kelce's girlfriend,
knucklehead. Yeah, Travis, I think, is a nice guy, but he's a knucklehead. Yeah, of course.
He doesn't even have, like, this is my problem with Travis Kelce, is that he doesn't have a personality like to market things.
Totally.
Like, he's totally blank.
He's like he's one of those affable, lunky white dudes who, like, a lot of women love because they think it's like he's harmless but sexy at the same time. He's sexy in a harmless way.
But he's not even fun or funny like Gronk.
Oh no, right? Yeah. There's no edge whatsoever. Yeah.
But yeah, it cuts to this billionaire girlfriend, like, celebrating and laughing and hugging her friends while your team is getting crushed.
Resentment will build.
Yeah,
is what you're suggesting. Yes. No. Gosh. Yeah. I guess. I don't know. I have a hard time with Travis Kelce, partly just envy, but partly because he is so fucking boring. Like, if he had, as you said, like, if he had an edge at all, no matter how rich and famous and what he looks like, I would still have I would have a basic respect for him. But no, he's a tool.
Yeah, like, why isn't Patrick Mahomes, the superstar quarterback with a funny, lovable personality who talks like Kenny Powers, why isn't he on the cover of your Doritos bag?
I mean, he gets sponsorship deals.
He gets some, but nowhere near the.
Well, you know why, brothers? White supremacy.
Yeah.
His father. Did you hear about his father this week?
The DUI.
Third. He's going to prison because it's his third DUI. Pat Mahomes was 11 years, I think, in the major leagues pitcher. So, it wasn't like a star in the major leagues, but he was certainly like an extremely successful professional baseball player. Yeah, he's got a problem with alcohol. He's an alcoholic. clearly. And what's his deal with the brother? You told me about this.
I don't think so.
Oh, my son told me.
Oh.
One of you young people. No, his brother's like not just gay, but like quite flamboyant in a trans way or something, or what something. Patrick, check me on this. I don't know, but I think my son told me that his brother, Patrick Mahomes' brother, is a very queer, very out, very public queer person. And it's caused problems in various ways. But and how do you do that? How do you become like the best player in the league, in the history of the football? He's the greatest quarterback of all time. How do you do that?
Peyton Manning slander, but
bro, you don't want to go. You don't want to go there. Trust me. I'm loaded for bear on this. No, there's no way. Even now, like Mahomes has already won more Super Bowls. He's already won more playoff games. He's already he's six. Crazy. I mean, Peyton was great, top 5.
Yeah, but he played before the NFL was rigged.
Oh,
yeah.
We should at some point talk about actually the concussion crisis and scandal, which totally changed the game, changed the NFL. There's a whole lot of stuff that went on there that I kind of bought into at the time, and I kind of gave up on the NFL. Turns out, now that I'm back in and like watching the league, I'm like, a lot of it was fucking rigged and sort of an attack on the sport that was kind of unjustified. I mean, a lot of it's legit, don't get me wrong. But anyway, there's a lot there. You were referring to that though, right? The post-concussion.
I'm joking. Well, I mean, another part of the Super Bowl conspiracy is that
right.
Like conspiracy theorists will go as far as to say, oh, SWIFT represents the international banking system. So all sports are giant psyops to suggest things into the public. So this year, it's all about the SWIFT banking system being promoted. Last year, it was all about Ukraine. You had a gold and yellow team, or 2 years ago, you had the Rams, a gold and yellow team winning. They were speculating that the Lions would win because that's Israel's colors. But
yeah. Okay, so let's do that. Let's talk about that, and then I want to talk about El Salvador because it's no, really. So 10 to 20 years ago ish, in response to someone saying anything like that Taylor Swift is part of a psyop for the U.S. government, deep state, to extend its power over, I would have dismissed immediately. I still did right now. I think that idea is like extremely, 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 extremely unlikely, and most likely an idiotic premise to begin with. Okay. But here's the thing. It's not actually what's happened in the world so much, not COVID, not the lab leak origins of COVID, not all the obvious psyops over the last few years. You know what it was that like made me forever, for the rest of my life, I will pause when I hear the most outlandish conspiracy theories involving the US government and consider them, no matter what they are, even if it's something like this, because I learned the history of what the US intelligence agencies have actually done in my lifetime. Shit that's so wild and outlandish, you can't believe it. Yeah, they parachuted people in secret at night into foreign countries to subvert them. They landed them and then infiltrated in Ukraine. This is what they did for decades. They literally parachuted commandos secretly into Ukraine, who then like set up sleeper cells inside Ukraine. And for decades, they lived there, working for the United States, fomenting revolution. They had scientists invent an exploding cigar to kill Fidel Castro with. They sent in snipers, helicoptered in. They came down on ropes off of helicopters onto roofs in Havana to take up positions as snipers to shoot and assassinate Fidel Castro. I mean, but this is like not even, there's so much more where they took over newspapers and radio stations and TV stations in every country in the fucking world and I mean, it goes on, and assassinated this, that, and the other guy in the world. I mean, you can't even imagine the stuff the CIA has done. That's documented, that we know about, that's not even contested. We know this stuff. We have the files. And so, no. And and the cultural stuff. I mean, they bought newspaper in the United States. They had newspapers and magazines and that were fronts that were run by the CIA talking propaganda to the people. They told newspapers still to this day what to say about the United States foreign policy. So is it completely, totally 100% insane to think that they would somehow want to get a hand on Taylor Swift? They talk to the New York Times every goddamn day. The CIA, they do. Yes, of course they do. Do you think they don't want to talk to Taylor Swift? They wouldn't somehow want to have someone in Taylor Swift's ear? At some point, someone in the CIA or the NSA or all the other intelligence agencies wouldn't come up, maybe wouldn't want to have, there's someone we know who's in Taylor Swift's external entourage who might get closer, who has the right ideas to give her about Joe Biden. Of course. Would they? Yes. Are they? I have no idea. But to dismiss even something that insane, that sort of outlandish, you can't do it anymore. You can't, because we know what they've done. They covered up the origins of COVID, which killed how many people? We know it became from the US government. Now, we've known this for years, but they covered that up, the CIA and all the intelligence operations. So, yeah, so that's, you got to be open-minded about the most ridiculous conspiracy theories now that we know way too much about these people. They are capable of really, truly anything.
I thought you were going to go to like Gloria Steinem working for the CIA and
that too.
Yeah.
Julia Child.
Yeah.
Julia Child, who's like one of my greatest heroes, who revolutionized American cuisine, huge part of my family life in various ways. Like, that was her first job. She worked for the CIA in Paris with her husband. Her husband was a senior agent in the CIA in the 50s in Paris. Speaking of the CIA, so El Salvador, we got to do this. This is really important.
Mm-hmm. I want to play a little clip of his acceptance speech, which looked like some of those speeches you were describing earlier from 20th century dictators. It's going to be in Spanish, but
Bukele. This is Bukele, the president who just got reelected in El Salvador, who the right wing loves, by the way, loves them.
Largest margins ever, also in a free contested elections.
Libertarians and conservatives in America love this guy.
85% of the vote. Here we go.
Pasamos de ser literalmente, no es una exageración, no es una hipérbole, literalmente pasamos de ser el país más inseguro del mundo a ser el país más seguro de todo el hemisferio occidental. El país más seguro de todo el continente americano. ¿Y qué dijeron? Está violando derechos humanos. ¿Los derechos humanos de quién? ¿De la gente honrada? No. Tal vez pusimos prioridad en los derechos de la gente honrada sobre los derechos de los delincuentes. Eso es lo único que hemos hecho. Y lo que ustedes a eso le llaman violar derechos humanos. Yo le pregunto a estos organismos, a estos gobiernos de naciones extranjeras, le pregunto a estos periodistas, ¿por qué desean que nos maten? ¿Por qué desean ver sangre de salvadoreños? ¿Por qué no están felices de que en nuestro país ya no corre la sangre que corría antes?
It's amazing. I didn't know you were going to play that clip. I haven't even seen that clip that I was talking about, the palace speech trope. So I don't think Bukele is Mussolini. quite, but let's talk about this guy because, as I said, every conservative and libertarian I've seen in the last year or two loves this guy. I've seen almost no pushback at all on him. Very similar, he's almost as popular as Milei in Argentina among that crowd. So there's two ways to talk about this. There's two questions to deal with here. One is the very interesting and important, crucial question of the relationship between security and freedom in terms of the state. How much do you want your state, the state in the place where you're living, to ensure security, which means what he's been doing, which we can talk about in a second. It always means cops and prisons and military, always, right? Versus just being laissez-faire and allowing freedom. So in the last 2.5 years, he has imposed 2 years. It was 22. So wait, no, year and a half, almost 2 years now. It was March. It was March 22.
2019, actually.
Well, no, the state of the
that campaign to
the state of the Bukele plan began.
The mega prisons was a year.
No. So what happened is in March of 22.
Okay.
The story from him is the MS-13, the big gang, which is, yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But they launched a 3-day wave of violence. They killed 87 people in 3 days across El Salvador. I want to know more about why then, but the story is that the government then had to act, and the Bukele plan was launched in response to this wave of violence by MS-13, which has been, and it's still in effect. It was supposed to be for like a month, and then they extended it and extended it and extended it, and now it's been whatever that is, 2 years now, almost 2 years. It's martial law. So they suspended all the civil rights. They suspended the Constitution in El Salvador. Due process, habeas corpus, the cops is all suspended. The cops can come to your house, take you away, put you in jail, and keep you there for as long as they want. And that's what's been happening. Okay, well, that's terrible. But then the right wing will say, and most Salvadorans will say, 90% of Salvadorans love this guy. Well, are supporting him. But I'm sure this is true. You know, overwhelmingly, they will tell you that, yeah, before him, MS-13 basically ran the country. And MS-13, you know, is worse, or was, now they're done, but were worse than the Mexican cartels. The Mexican cartels, a lot of people don't know this. Most of them are run by guys who actually operate according to the logic of an honor society, an honor culture. Which looks and is utterly brutal in many ways, but they don't kill people sadistically. The cartels don't do that. They don't kill people for the most part. I mean, I'm sure there's hitmen and whatever and thugs in the cartels who do that, but the leaders of the cartels in Mexico generally don't do that. There's always some actual rational explanation for why they behead people, honest to God. Usually based on the honor culture or just straight up competition, or in retaliation for something that was a legitimate atrocity too. So but MS-13, my point is, have not been like that. And they may have started like that, but I don't think so, because we'll talk about their origins. And their origins explains everything and is really what people need to think about. The original reason for all of this, why we had to do this, is, guess what? Uncle Sam, I mean, I'm sorry. Yes, when you're the superpower, you do take the blame for shit because you are the one who primarily causes things. MS-13, which at its height, when I was living in Salem, Oregon, this is 5 years ago, had an affiliate in Salem, Oregon. They had an affiliate in Portland, Oregon. I looked on a map the FBI put out about all the MS-13 affiliate groups across the United States. It was every single city of any decent size. They were fanning out across North America. They were all up in the United States because we had a lot of Salvadorans in this country by then, and a lot of recent illegal immigrants from El Salvador. MS-13 was In many ways rational, sort of standard drug gang. Then they moved into prostitution. They did a little, what's called human trafficking, meaning like being coyotes, helping people migrate, that kind of shit. But a lot of what they did was being a sadistic boys club. And they had power. These were young 16, 17, 18-year-old, very poor guys from the barrios of San Salvador who were given a gun and essentially sovereignty over particular neighborhoods, who came from nothing, who had no future, who had no like career laid out for them. They were never going to get married, never going to own a house, blah, blah, blah. Have always lived in poverty, and they lived in a culture of machismo too. Yeah, they raped and murdered and fucking killed and rampaged and burned houses down and stole children, baby girls from families and raped them and essentially enslaved them and killed wantonly and tortured people. And I mean, I mean, like, not just in El Salvador, but they go look in Long Island. I mean, look at MS-13 in Long Island. You can just Google that. You can see crimes that you can't believe, all up and down the West Coast, Chicago, even in the Midwest. MS-13 guys were just doing ridiculous shit. Some of it was semi-rational, but most of it was just like young dudes with guns and sadism. So that's who ran much of El Salvador until Bukele took over in 2019. And, well, if I had been living in El Salvador, there's no doubt I would have voted for him. And there's no doubt I would have supported probably what he did initially, which was to suspend all civil rights, suspend the Constitution, build brand new huge prisons, and go and round up every motherfucking member of the MS-13, which is what he did over about a 1-year period. Just had giant police forces invade neighborhoods and just arrest everybody. And this is the problem. Everybody who they thought might have been involved with the gangs. And probably 90+% of the time, they were right. And they locked up really shitty guys, terrible persons, murderers, etc., rapists, all the rest, who thank God are in prison. I'm sure more than 90% of those guys, absolutely, we all agree should be in prison. But they also locked up, and there's been lots of human rights groups doing investigations into this. Lots of other people who are completely innocent, especially a lot of women. Lots of girlfriends, lots of women who might have dated some dude in MS-13. A lot of women who were seen with a dude in MS-13, yada, yada. I mean, lots of people, lots of family members, lots of brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles who were locked up for this. Some people just for living in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. And we don't know exactly the numbers. We're just getting anecdotes, but it's clearly a lot. So he locked up, get this, in the last 2 years, year and a half, 1.6% of the population has been incarcerated in the last 2 years. This is pretty serious. This is a very huge operation. He's put out videos, really slickly produced videos about these new gleaming modern prisons full of these tightly disciplined prisoners in them. He puts them out on his Twitter, which is super popular. And as I said, the right wing, libertarians love him. Conservatives love him. The right wing loves him. There's now, just in the last few months, I think, an actual legitimate, serious protest movement, finally, against what he's done. And they use the word libertad, freedom. And I'm like, when they started chanting that in San Salvador at some I was like, wow, I thought the right wing, I thought conservatives were for liberty. But apparently not. So, I get it. There's that very eternal, important question about security versus freedom. And that's something we can debate. I mean, and it's not easy. That's not an easy one. But what is easy is knowing what the United States did to produce all of this and what we should stop doing going forward because of this. So my first political experience, like in terms of involvement, actual activism and work, was after college when I worked in this, what we call the Central American Solidarity Campaign, which did lots of solidarity work with the Sandinistas or their affiliates in Nicaragua, and with the FMLN, who were the communist insurgency in El Salvador. There was a grotesque civil war in El Salvador in the 1980s. Ronald Reagan, in many ways, just funneled money into the Salvadoran government. They had death squads, huge massacres. They killed 1,000 people in one day in a village. People who were trained in the United States killed them. But they were also communists. Anyway, it doesn't matter ultimately, because just this went on for, I think, 8 years. I think more than 100,000 people were killed in this war, civil war. The United States was on the side of the government, funneled money, guns, helicopters, all of it into that region, destabilized it radically, caused hundreds of thousands of refugees to leave El Salvador in the 80s. Where did they come? Los Angeles, for the most part, and to some extent here, San Francisco, but mostly LA. I think it was 100,000 Salvadoran immigrants in the 1980s as a result of this war. Okay, so that's number one thing we did, was we forced all these people to come to our country to seek refuge. They were the poorest of Central America. Mexicans look down on Salvadorans. Salvadorans to Mexicans are like blacks to a lot of white Americans. They're the poor criminal element you don't want in your neighborhood. So they end up in LA. They take over certain parts of certain neighborhoods in LA. The Mexican gangs and the black gangs do not allow them in and actually go to war against these Salvadoran immigrants in the 80s in LA. And this is when the gang wars in LA were just off the chain and super violent. So the Salvadorans were basically forced to form their own gang, which became MS-13. And they then started getting arrested, because this is when the U.S. started to crack down on the war on drugs. MS-13 was in drugs, of course. That's the only way to make money as a gang. Ding, ding, ding. Think about this, what we might do in the future. Should we have a war on drugs or not? MS-13, a bunch of them go to prisons all across the state, San Quentin, Folsom. And you know what happens when you're like in an ethnic gang in a California prison? You tend not to become the most compassionate, warm-hearted person. In fact, you start to devise plans to take over turf and businesses and industries, etc. And that's what MS-13 did. And in some ways, it's like a against all odds underdog story, because again, they were up against the Salvadoran government, the communists, the U.S. government, and then the fucking Mexican and black gangs in California too. And they managed to form the most badass, most nasty, most murderous, vicious, ruthless gang there was. That was the only way they could win. And they did. And they took over a lot of territory in the United States, in California. And then we started to deport people. Obama when he was president, 2009, 10, 11, he deported something like, 100,000 Salvadorans back, MS-13 members, back to El Salvador. El Salvador had like almost no government, no state, because it had been through a civil war that we had created. Shitty like police force, of course, almost no military, So all these like hardcore gangsters with guns, thousands and thousands, flood back in from LA. MS-13 is LA created. Flood back into El Salvador in 2008, 9, 10, 11, and take over the joint. Entire swaths of San Salvador were run by them. The drug war is in full swing now, right? This is after Clinton and Obama just like ramping up the drug war, causing them to have tremendous profits in drugs. Sex work, the war on sex work continues, which all that means is higher prices and more incentive for sadistic, murderous demons like MS-13 to get into this business, which they did too. And then immigration, you make immigration illegal. Well, guess what? There's another business for these assholes. So they got into that as well. All these things, making these things illicit, is simply a means for the worst people on earth to make a living. And worse, become rich, buy guns, recruit young men, give young men in San Salvador slums a reason to live, a feeling of belonging, put tattoos on their faces forever. that tells them that they will always be part of a family, and that's what they call themselves, a family. Is that crazy? We do not understand why like young boys from barrios in El Salvador would feel something good about that. So yeah, I mean, the whole fucking thing is created by US policy. And then then the whole mess, the whole murderous mess, the US, El Salvador, in the last 10 years before Bukele, what El Salvador did accomplish was it surpassed one nation as having the highest murder rate. Surpassed Honduras and Guatemala for having the highest murder rate in Latin America. And now they have surpassed one other nation in having the highest prison population rate, the United States. El Salvador now has the highest percentage of prisoners in its population of any country in the world. We were number one until Bukele, until 2 years ago. So it's Bukele, it's El Salvador, which is the right wing's favorite country right now, and then United States, number two. We are the two countries that incarcerate the highest percentages of our populations. There was a video on Twitter just a few days ago of a bunch of teenagers skateboarding in downtown San Salvador, and the streets look like glass. They're so smooth, and there's no one. It just looks utterly peaceful and serene, and these teenagers just gliding down this beautiful street and the whole point of the video is to say, look how much has changed, because that apparently San Salvador was just like a war zone and a slum until Bukele. And I'm sure it's way better to live there, but go look, their incarceration rate is through the roof. They incarcerate higher percentages of their population than Cuba, than Russia, than China, than the United States, than Iran, by far. They have these vast prison complexes out in the desert, just stacked. They're just warehouses of human beings. And again, a lot of those guys are the worst people on earth and should be completely in prison forever, most likely. But there's also no civil rights, and the state is supreme in the lives of everyone. And everyone now fears the state, the government, instead of MS-13. So there you go, everyone. That's what's going on. My conservative and libertarian friends who love this dude, and also he's into crypto, so they think that's cool. Like, I'm not setting out a particular policy prescription on El Salvador. I'm not saying you should have one position or another. Just know the history and the nuance of this before you start jerking off to this dude.
But you can't say he doesn't have the consent of the governed.
Well, I mean, sure, in the moment, you could say that. I mean, it's like 90%, I think, approval rating among Salvadorans. That's
and the legislative body keeps extending this plan every month.
He's very popular among the vast majority of Salvadorans. There is some, as I said, opposition, but it's about 10% or less. But again, that's like now. So like that could change tomorrow. And then what are you going to say? Like, I mean, Saddam Hussein was popular for a minute too. I mean, they all were popular for a minute or two, and then they turned out not to be. And then we're like, okay, was he always cool or not? I mean, so to say he has the consent of the governed, sure. But I mean, again, that's very transitory and momentary. We'll see.
Okay.
I just don't want to be attached to the fucker. That's all.
Yeah. We got to talk about Killer Mike.
Oh, Jesus.
At the Grammy. Yeah. I want to talk about the hip hop Grammy. I think I have the opposite opinion of you when it comes to who deserves to win those Grammys. But Killer Mike swept pretty much all hip hop categories, or the three big ones. Won Album of the Year for Michael, and then got arrested on a misdemeanor assault charge. And conspiracy theorists were saying, oh, he refused to endorse Joe Biden when he went on Bill Maher. Maybe that's why he got arrested. But I do want to say, isn't it weird that a 48-year-old is being given an award for basically a young person's culture, which is hip hop?
Wait, what did you just say?
Yeah,
What do you mean? Wait. Hold on. Whose culture is it?
Young persons.
Hip hop?
Yeah.
Wait,
a
you're
young
saying
person thing.
you're saying it's more of a young person's culture than Killer Mike's because he's 48? You're not serious?
When it
man.
comes to album of the year, when it comes to streams, Killer Mike is born and bred hip hop. I'm not going to deny Killer Mike's involvement, one of the best MCs ever. Okay.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about the 2023 album of the year, what album was bumping in the clubs? What album did you hear being blasted along your street corners? What album propelled tours? What album got the most streams? What album actually influenced the culture? It's Travis Scott by a mile. And then it's Drake. And then if you want to go for the artistic integrity, you might want to put Nas in the picture and say he's more deserving as an MC than Killer Mike.
So, I mean, let's do jazz for a second. All right. So think about jazz here. All right. Let's say there's jazz up to like 1980. Okay. From the roots of jazz all the way to 1980. All those guys playing the jazz music. Okay. From 1900 to 1980. All right. Jelly Roll Morton, Louis Armstrong, Kid Ory, on and on and on. Okay. All the way up through like John Coltrane. That whole thing. Dizzy Gillespie, Charlie Parker. And then take jazz like after 1980. I mean, would you want to say now that jazz is a young person's music? There's a lot of young people playing jazz. I happen to know one very talented jazz guitarist. He's 19 years old. There's lots of them. Would you want to say, Michael Weimer, that jazz is a young person's music?
I would.
And therefore we should listen to the young kids and what they're playing to see what jazz is?
I would say that the history of jazz got more institutionalized than the history of hip hop.
Don't give me this fucking bullshit. You learned in your little cultural studies class. Wait, what? You know that those guys invented the fucking music.
They did. But
they and not only they invented every part of, they invented every subgenre. By 1980, even fusion was invented. Miles was bebop, swing, all of it, post bop was all invented. The whole thing, every subgenre, just like hip hop. After 1980, I'm a huge fan of all the jazz musicians since 1980. I've seen those guys. That's when I was like in the 90s. That's what I did. I loved watching those guys. They were so good. They were great. All they were doing was copying the greats who created the music. Now, hip hop artists, stop shaking your head. Hip hop artists now don't even imitate the greats. They mumble to the same trap beat over and over and over again. They're not inventing anything. They're not even like doing a decent job of imitating the greats. How is this hip hop, and why should we even call it that? Okay, I give it back to you.
I take it you haven't listened to Travis Scott's Utopia.
Travis Scott is... I mean, do you not hear what like Eminem has said about these people? What DMX has said about these people, what Rakim has said about these people? Do you not hear what the people who mastered this genre of music have said about this current generation?
They might be referring to the Little Yachties when they were making the whole mumble rap thing. They might have been referring to the Lil Pumps. Maybe right now they're referring to Sexy Red and Ice Spice, but
right.
Ask them about Travis Scott. Ask them about Travis Scott and Drake, who both have amazing, respectable pens.
Hey, listen.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Yeah.
They might have amazing, respectable other things, not pens.
Yeah.
Listen, Killer Mike is where we started here. Okay. Yeah. 48 years old. You pointed that out to discredit him, to say that he's not worthy of, our respect. And what I will say to everyone right here listening, and to anyone else who might just feel my brainwaves, go listen to Run the Jewels, first 3 albums. And you know what I'll say? You can pick any song at fucking random. You don't even have to go and listen to the most popular, biggest hits. I don't care. First 3 albums, whole albums, 10 songs or something like that, each album. LP's production, Killer Mike's rapping, cannot be beat. Gen X created this whole genre of music and are still the masters of it. That is it. Go compare that rap, Killer Mike's rapping, on anything, but certainly those albums, including his current album, compared to Travis Scott's little bitch ass. Give me like 1 bar of Travis Scott that is even close to Killer Mike. What? I don't. Did you all get? What did we do to our children, Gen X? Did we drop you all on your heads at the same time? Fuck, man. I hope that wasn't insulting, but I meant it to be. You're not serious. You don't really think Travis Scott is talented?
Yes. Yeah, I think his drum sound is probably impeccable. It's the hardest sounding, most perfect drum sound that you could put literally anything on top of. I think he brought drums back to the forefront of this music as a producer, and his artistic vision is expansive, exists in its own world. I have for years worked for a moving company cleaning out dorm rooms. For years, I could not go into a boys' dorm room and not see a Travis Scott poster or
my son too. Yes, he had I bought him a Travis Scott poster. Okay, that's how cool I am. But I hated it, and I told him I was protesting it while I was buying it for him. Yeah, but that doesn't mean he's good.
It means that he's influential. It means that he's the forefront of hip hop artists right now, and his contributions are not being recognized or even considered by music head critics who value other things in their music, as opposed to like what's actually hot and what's actually influencing people.
Okay. Just everyone, please go listen to RTJ1, RTJ2, or RTJ3. Those are the Run the Jewels first 3 albums. They're best production, and Killer Mike is he's similar to Ice Cube, I think, on his power, the sharpness of his delivery. He's that good. Do that. Then, and I'm going to leave everyone with this, just intellectually. Oh my God. I mean, did you hear Killer Mike on Mar?
Yeah.
Right.
I caught the clip too. Yeah.
He's so good. He's always like so on fucking point. Mar's like, who are you going to vote for? Who do you support? Do you like Trump? Are you anti-Trump? And Bill and Mike's like, what I say is support the policy, not the person. Care about the policies, not the person. Like, it's the most basic old school liberal idea, but it's like so fundamental, powerful, essential, and like no one has thought of this for decades. Mike comes in and just like cuts right through it. And I'm telling you, when I did that interview with him, I was just like consistently blown away with dude. He knows history, and he can deal, and he doesn't just know Black history, which I also fucking love about him. He's pro gun rights. He owns barbershops, the most popular barbershops in Atlanta. Can you imagine hanging out in those places? What you would learn? No, I mean, he's kind of a genius, and he just went to Morehouse and got a bachelor's. Like, you know, he's not like a professor. He's been a fucking rapper, and he smokes weed all day long, and he can run. I mean, Travis Scott, by contrast, when asked how many of his fans were killed at his concert, said, "Oh,
I'm sorry. Was his concert so lit that people died? Were people having such a good time that were people flocking and rushing to?"
No, wait. I'm just trying to listen. I want to do him justice. I want to quote him accurately. His response when he was asked what he thought about all those people dying was, "You're right." Which is, you know, that I was like, oh well, that's what your lyrics sound like too.
Okay, I don't look for my hip hop artists to be intellectual guests on talk shows, and I don't look for my hip hop artists.
No, I'm just saying your guys fail in every dimension. That's all. There's in no way are they good.
Oh, your hip hop artists, I'm sure, would write a much better apology if a fan died. But nobody would ever die at one of your hip hop artists because they're not that lit. If you're talking about the guy who moves young people and has the most lit parties, it's Travis Scott. That's what hip hop is about. It's about throwing the most lit rager ever.
No one would die for them.
Yeah,
you're right. No, you're right. Like, so your guys are like Jim Jones, which is why you're into them. Okay, cool. Isn't in fact one of your guys named Jim Jones? I think isn't
Jim Jones.
I think
he was a rap rapper, an Atlanta guy.
One of your Zoomer rappers, I think, goes by Jim Jones. How funny! Oh, interesting. So you're like a culture of martyrs. You're like Gaza. You're like the culture of death. Why is it that your mothers all like love killing your babies? What? All right, man. All right, we are over time. And it's time to go.
Yeah.
To the greatest after party on the internet. I love it. It's when I finally relax after being harassed by this young freak for an hour and a half. No, just kidding. Yeah, no, we go to, it's called Unregistered Live. And it's, if you're a patron of the show, we hang out, a Zoom meeting right after this, right now. And if you want to hang out with us and join us, and you can say whatever you want, you can be completely anonymous and not say anything and not even be seen or known. If you want, that's another option, by the way. People don't know that. It's just a Zoom meeting, so you can like block your video or audio, or you can come in and yell at me, scream at me, whatever you want to do. Go to patreon.com/unregistered. Join up at any level, super cheap, monthly little price. And you can click on the URL right there, and it'll take you to this meeting that I'm about to go to. So thank you, Michael. I was kidding, right?
About, about being harassed or what?
About the Chiefs winning.
About the Chiefs winning.
That was a joke, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't want to. I was worried I was offending you about that because I know you're not too far from Kansas City.
And this is
all right, man.
Also the psyop is that all of Middle America will be rooting for San Francisco for the first time.
Fuck the Niners. God, I hate that team. Mm-hmm. Trust me, guys. Get a loan out, steal money, rob a bank, and go put it all on the Chiefs. Just do it, and you'll thank me on Monday. All right, everybody. Peace. Thank you, Michael.
See ya.